think we should kick it off, Stephanie?
I think so. Here we go.
All right, well, cool. Welcome everybody to our national, I guess international now, K12 Tableau user group. Super excited you're here. We've got a great agenda lined up for you guys today. So as you can see, we'll do some introductions. We have some announcements and upcoming events. And then we'll dive straight in to the rest of the time in our presentation. So we'll have Erik from Webster Central is going to show all of the unique ways that they are using Tableau in Infinite Campus. And then Chantavia and Lissette are going from Camino Nuevo Charter Academy are really going to focus on how they've been able to scale their usage of Tableau with the small data team leveraging training, recruitment, and community support. So for those of you that have not been on one of these user groups before, and I see many familiar names, so welcome back. But those of you that are new, just a quick recap of why we're here. This is really a space to bring you all together to really help you guys see like what are other customers doing, what are other districts doing, and hopefully give you some inspiration to bring back to your school and your district. Also to share some best practices and resources. A lot of you guys use similar SIS and LMSs, so you'll probably have some questions about that. And then lastly, really give you guys a specific community within the Tableau Data fam to make connections. Lots of connections have been made from these tugs, and we've heard lots of stories about people talking afterwards and sharing emails and finding out, how did you do this? How did you do that? So I know everyone presenting is more than happy to connect after. And here is just a quick intro of our national K12 team. So I'm Cassidy Macias. I'm from Tableau. I am the director of our education business, and I've been at Tableau about 5.5 years. I've also got Sarah Swanbeck on the line. She's one of our account executives. She's also been at Tableau quite a long time. I'm sure a lot of you guys know her. Stephanie?
Hello, everyone. I'm a manager with the business analytics practice here at Plant Moran and a part of this leadership team for this group. Our partnership with Tableau has continued through supporting user groups such as this. I've been with our firm for 4 years, but in that data analytics space for over 19. Prior to joining the firm, I came from Cherry Creek School District, where I worked for nearly 16 years. So still being able to make that connection in the education space, which is near and dear to my heart, as well as Tableau. So we support clients all over the country, leveraging their data analytics to make great business decisions, helping them select tools, helping them train, think through processes. So I appreciate my time here, being able to support this user group, helping you all make connections, providing guidance. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to my colleague, Thomas.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie. So Thomas Price, I'm a senior consultant with Slalom. I work in the data and analytics practice. Been here at Slalom for about 2.5 years now, and just a little background on us. We work with a myriad of companies ranging from all industries, and we work in a lot of different parts of how we can implement data analytics in your culture, whether you're at square one and just trying to figure out what does data analytics mean for implementing in a school district, to maybe you're trying to do something a little bit more advanced, which we've done with multiple K-12 clients. Really excited to be here. I think it's always great to see the stories and the types of applications that we have going on with Tableau in the K-12 community. And with that, I think this is a great way to segue into our first presenter today. So this is going to be Erik Blask. Oh, sorry, do we have one more slide?
Yeah, we switched it up on you, so all good. So hold that real quick. I just want to quickly cover 2 things. So first, for everybody, our Iron Viz competition, which is at Tableau conference, we are accepting entries. So if you'll go to the next slide with some information. So those of you that aren't familiar with Iron Viz, as I said, it's our annual data visualization contest that happens at Tableau conference, where the finalists compete. Actually, this past year we had a lady from Lisa Turcotte from a community college in California was the national winner, and she won $10,000 and also another $5,000 to a nonprofit that she supports, and free entry to Tableau conference in 2022. So would highly encourage you guys, if you have some good data skills and are wizards with dashboards to compete, submit your entries. You have until February 7th to submit, and you can see all the info here. We'll share a link in the chat if you're interested in more. And just so you know, there's a first, second, and third place at the finals in at Tableau Conference. The last thing is Tableau Conference. We don't have the exact dates this year yet, but it is going to be moved up. So we are hearing it's going to be most likely in late spring, early summer. So stay tuned on that, and we'll share out dates when we have them. And then just a heads up on the upcoming events, we will share this out with you after. So those of you that are asking, will the slides be sent out? Is this recorded? Yes and yes. But we will have some workshops following today's tug. And then please take note of our next tug, which will be April 20th. And then the one after that will be in July. So we run these quarterly. And with that, Thomas, I'll hand it back over to you.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll say this about IronViz, that hands down my favorite event at a Tableau conference. Like, just an amazing, I think, way just to see someone build really cool stuff on the fly. But yeah, so Erik is going to be our first presenter for today. So Erik is the director of data and informatics at Webster Central School District. And he's going to be talking about some really interesting, I think, great and just very practical to any school district applications of Tableau. And Erik, I'll just hand it off to you and kick us off.
Hi, thanks, Thomas. As Thomas said, I'm Erik Blask, Webster Central School District. It is suburban Rochester up on Lake Ontario, where we get about 100 inches of snow a year, yet really have no snow days. We're one of the larger districts in the state of New York, 22nd out of over 600, with about 8,000 students, 7 elementary buildings, 2 middle, 2 high, 2 alternate programs. And even though it was a sad Sunday here in the upstate New York, we still have the Go Bills thing on there that I put on earlier in the week, because we're big Bills fans up here. Down at the bottom is a bit.ly that I put together that has all the resources from today. So if you want to pop in and see stuff, you're welcome to go over there and grab that now or later. Our data team here in Webster is really a 3-person team. We have 2 people who handle, for the most part, all of our SIS setup and all of our state reporting. I have a handle in both of those, or hand in both of those, but I try and spend most of my time working in Tableau and doing database reporting through SQL Server. I've been in this role for about 4 years. Prior to that, I had over a decade of experience as a math teacher and math director, which I think a lot of folks in the education world start in the math side and then move over to the analytics side. So we also have a kind of unique setup for Tableau. We have a Tableau server. I also use desktop to push stuff up to the server. Because I learned on desktop, that's kind of where I am. I'm trying to transition a little bit more over to server in general. But our Tableau server is connected via API with Infinite Campus, which is our learning management system. So that setup is all developed and managed by custom computers, which is great for me as a user and as an administrator, because I don't really have to worry about it. I don't have to give anybody else accounts to Tableau, and no one really knows we're even using Tableau. Sorry for that lack of branding, but they go in through Infinite Campus, they click on the links that are provided, and they jump to a dashboard. So from a end user standpoint, they're just staying right inside the LMS pretty much entirely. And because it's all linked through the Infinite Campus ecosystem, we can essentially do a lot of calls through the API to check the person ID of the logged in user, the selected calendar of the logged in user, so that we can only return data based on those IDs of who's connected. So we can, it has kind of built-in row level security, so that people are only seeing data that they have access to based on either who they are or what school or calendar they have access to through the Infinite Campus. It prevents us from then having to go back into Tableau Server and manage access and accounts that way. So one of the things that allows us to do is some non-traditional dashboards, a lot of which we've used over the past couple of years centered around letters. So one here is a letter that's a bus letter that we put together quickly when there was an issue with how our bus information was being shared out from the transportation system. They were going to a new system and it wasn't quite feeding over well like we wanted to. So we were able to quickly throw together a letter that had each parent was able to access through the portal that has their students' bus information on it. We then had a similar situation come up, actually not similar situation, but the food service department was constantly getting calls of, I need a letter of proof that my child is eligible for free and reduced lunch because I need it for SATs or ACTs or college admissions or whatever the case is. Parents and students were requiring that letter for various things, and the food service department was having to go in, find the student, print a generic or print them a letter. So what we were able to do is we collect free and reduced lunch status through our LMS and through our SIS. So we were able to go in, generate a letter for each student in real time using Tableau, so that parents could go on and grab that letter off, and it's updated to the minutes of what their current status is. And it saved a lot of headache for our food service department. And then another one that's kind of along the same lines is our directory. Not sure if you're aware, but phishing attacks are kind of a big deal. So our security team kind of came and said, listen, we have every teacher's email address and phone number on the website. We have everyone's name on the website. And we know that bad actors are going out there and scraping that information off. As much as we try and protect it, they're able to get in there and grab it. So we kind of brainstormed some ways, and basically we created a Tableau dashboard that really is just a handful of pieces here. So if you think about it from a dashboard perspective, this is all just text on the dashboard. This is an icon, image that we put in, still right from our phone directory for internal folks. And we tweak this a little bit. There's a slightly different version that shows out for parents. But what's nice is we're able to put this inside the parent portal. So it lives in the parent portal. The outside world doesn't have access to it. They have to be a parent with an account, or they have to be an employee in the district to be able to access the employee side. And then they can use all the search functionality for the dashboard. And it just returns a fairly simple table coming back by staff member, position, shows their email, shows their phone number. I got a little bit fancy and threw a little email icon in there. And if you click on it, you can open a link and it'll shoot an email off right to that person. So not terribly complicated. Essentially, it drives off Google Sheets. So our HR system is super antiquated, and I can't even connect Tableau to it. They're working on updating that, but they're working a little bit slower than I'd like. So essentially what I do is I do an export from the HR system that has everybody's information that needs to go up there: name, position, school, phone number, email, and then I just dump that into Google Sheets. And we do it essentially monthly throughout the school year. At the beginning of the school year, we do it more often. You can imagine when we start school at the end of August, beginning of September, which is when we start up here, I pull those a couple of times a week so that updated information is in there. However, once October rolls around, it's pretty much the end of the month that we pull it. We'll look at changes in semesters. We'll also pull an updated one there. It works pretty quickly. And then there's a couple of kind of simple case statements, if statements, where for the most part, everybody gets the generic phone number for the school. And then there are a few positions. So if you're a nurse, you get a special phone number, because we don't want, if parents are looking for the nurse, we want them to call and get directly to the nurse. There are certain assistant principals who said, I don't want to go to the generic school line, just have them call directly to my office. So I wrote an if statement that basically just looks for, if they have a special number in the in the table, then it gives them the number. If they have a special position that gives a number, it gives that phone number. Otherwise, they just get the generic phone number that is based off the school where they attend or where they work. Going back to the bus letter, it's a pretty simple setup that we use and have replicated a few other times. So essentially, it's just a person ID filter where we check the person ID of the person logged in with a parameter that gets sent over from the SIS and connect that to our student information system tables that we're pulling. And the key is you just build a dashboard that's paper size, 850 by 1100. And then for a header, we stick in an image and a text box and some pretty simple tables. I'm going to pop over and jump over to Tableau and kind of show you how this is set up. So in Tableau, I put up kind of a dummy data source. So I don't think you're seeing a whole bunch of kids' information and just some basic information. Obviously, you're going to need to pull some sort of information from your SIS, whether it's a view or just direct access to the tables. The key thing for us is this person ID. So when you're looking at the person ID, that's the parameter that gets sent over from Infinite Campus to Tableau. And if we were running this live, there would be a join here that connects and says, okay, take the person ID that's sent over and only return the values that are associated with that. So that way you're only seeing your students. And I built a pretty quick little table, first name, last name, grade, throw in their bus stop information. And then again, since it's not really a live database and it's a test environment, I can control that person ID for the parent who's logged in. So if I'm logged in as parent person 3, these are the students I see. If I log in as parent 5, boom, it would update and I would only see those, I would only have those results returned to me as a parent. And then it's a pretty simple letter format. So there's a icon up here that's just imported as an image, and I'll kind of demo that in a second as well. We throw some text up here that you can format, a quick little letter, and then drop in the table here. As an example, I'm going to kind of pull up a new one. Let's say we wanted to actually get a little bit fancy with it and return a different statement for every student that was in a grade. So I might go to grade and create a calculated field, and we'll call this field trip or field day location. So then what I can do is say, if the grade is greater than or equal to 4, I'm going to say field days will take place in the gymnasium. And then for everybody else, they're going to take field day will take place in the athletic field. And obviously, you can get more complicated with this. Oh, it doesn't like something. What did I? Oh, I forgot my then. So you can get more complicated with this. You can make it longer. This is a fairly simple one. And now I can throw those student names in there. So I have a student name in here, and I can throw that field day location as my text. And it's right there. Maybe I don't even want the student name, because depending on how I build the dashboards, sometimes the student name doesn't really matter. And I probably don't want this up here either. So I can just get rid of my header. And then when I build a new dashboard, again, set it to be letter portrait. And now I have a few options. So first thing is I'm going to throw an image up there in the top. We like to be fancy and brand our stuff. So I have an image here. boom, it's up there. And then I might have, I'm going to grab a text box to throw some additional information in there. Come on. And I actually grabbed, I kind of had that transportation one already done up. Stick it in there, and then it's a matter of just formatting and playing around with, oh, it doesn't like what I did there. Let's throw one of those first. Oh. See, you can kind of quickly change that. Now I've got an image here. I can fit that image. And then as I rearrange my size here, I can end up with a pretty decent looking letterhead. And then I might have some more text I'm going to throw in here as a generic field day text. Whatever we want it to be. Probably going to take up a fair amount of room. And then I might throw sheet 2 right underneath there. And field day will take place in the athletic field because I only have that one student selected who's a 4th grader. If I had another student selected, obviously it would put more information in there. And then when parents go on, they see this, it shows up in their portal, and they can click the download button and it allows them to download as a PDF. It's come in pretty handy. We've been using it for COVID letters. So as we've started doing COVID testing within the school, we had parents who said, this is great, but now I want to have an official letter that I can go take to their football team to say that they're eligible to keep playing Pop Warner. Or I want to have an official letter that I can take when we go on vacation that says they tested positive. And they're now in their 90-day magic window where they don't have to do any testing or anything. So we were able to generate letters right here that kind of just had their positive status, had some official verbiage on that we were the school who did the test, who our doctor is, what type of test it is, and generate that out to parents. And it was a huge help. And other than putting their test result in Infinite Campus, we didn't have to do anything else. All the other information is already there. It's locked down based on that row level security as to who has access to that. So parents can only see the letter for their child, and it works out really well. Going back to the slideshow here, free and reduced lunch status was another one that I talked about earlier. These letters get a little, or statements get a little bit more complicated because you've got to deal with, are they free and reduced lunch now? Are they full? Are they reduced? Are they eligible for the end of the year? Are they eligible just for a certain point? Because at the beginning of the year, there's just rollover. So those, you can get some a little more complicated if statements, a little bit more complicated strings, just putting some things together. Again, this is basically the sentence that gets built for free and reduced lunch of this letter certifies, grab the first name, put a space, grab the last name, is eligible for, what's their group, add in the lunch effective through, and then put the date. So it's a little bit more complicated building those strings, but all things that are fairly easy to do as well. So that's kind of all the information I had to share with you all. Happy to answer any questions. I will be honest and have not been monitoring the Q&A. I don't know if Thomas has been it. I'll take a look there.
Yeah, I can read them out loud to you, and then I'll just let you answer them. So the first question that came in is from Jennifer. Are you also able to publish workbooks that are unrelated to Infinite Campus data, such as community survey data?
Yes. We can do it one of two ways. So we can publish the workbook and then put the link in there and parents can have access to it. If we don't restrict down based on the person ID, so we have some workbooks that we publish that way that are school-wide or district-wide. And we've started doing that. We don't typically do that through Infinite Campus. I actually push some of that out to our to Tableau Public, and we do an annual or biannual survey every 2 years, district-wide for all parents, staff, students, and we publish that right on Tableau Public. And then we just put links to it inside newsletters and inside just the website itself for all the public data. Now, the administrators and the teachers get a different view, so they can zoom in on that data a little bit more closely. So those we do publish to inside Infinite Campus, and I just have to build in a school ID code to match the survey school. So if in the survey the student selects Thomas High School, which is one of our high schools, I have to add in a column to that data to match it up and say, okay, Thomas High School is really school ID number 15 from our Infinite Campus system to match them up. But it does work. I'm looking at the next one. In the parent portal, what steps does Webster take to meet ADA compliance? Infinite Campus takes care of all the portal stuff there. We don't do anything special on that. We do have some things that we'll do around translations. So we communicate regularly with all of our families that have identified to us that they want translated information. And we have translated translation services and have provided that for some of the dashboards and some of the letters. So that's an easy way for us to do that. They just contact the office like they normally would for anything else, and we provide them an updated letter. But we don't do anything too special with that. It's something that's on our horizon, but a lot of things have kind of gotten pushed off on the horizon the past 2 years, as I'm sure most of your workloads have shifted towards more COVID things, just like mine has. So the FRM status update, that means parents can update directly and the backend digitally. No, well, yes and no. So in Infinite Campus, parents are able to apply for free and reduced lunch. So once they once they submit an application for free and reduced lunch, our food service staff will process it. If they're approved, boom, the next day they see the status in their letter. And that kind of ties in directly to the next question, which is, does it connect directly or via warehouse? And we do both. We will connect, most of our stuff happens via the warehouse because we have a dedicated warehouse that lives on the same server as Tableau, and that's updated nightly. It's just for speed and efficiency. That way we don't have a whole bunch of queries going against our live database. We do have some queries that go against our live database because it doesn't make sense to query some data and get the day-old data. However, most of the time, for example, parent information and most of those parent letters, we tell them they're updated the next day, and that makes a big difference. We do set some download permissions. Most of them, we allow them to download the PDF, but not the data. We don't let them download. So the directory, we don't let any downloads happen because that was our big concern. So to put it out there in Tableau and then have them be able to download the data or download a CSV or download an Excel file would have kind of defeated the purpose of kind of putting it behind a paywall, essentially. So we have kind of locked down all of those downloads. All the letters, we just lock it down to PDF, and it works out really well. There's actually a little hot button that pops up that says download as PDF, and they're able to click on that. And we haven't really received any complaints. The only complaint we've received is they have to access all those PDF letters. They can't do it on their app on their phone. Infinite Campus, just like everybody else, has an app. And the app doesn't connect as well to the Tableau dashboards. So they have to go in through their web browser and connect that way, which does impede the progress of some folks. Other people are able to do it without a problem. The reality is it doesn't eliminate the phone calls we get about letters, but it allows a lot more information to be at parents' fingertips. So that helps. And then for printing letters, we don't print any letters. Parents would have to go in and do it themselves. I just build the dashboard to pull in generic information based on that student ID. If we have to print letters for students, we don't use Tableau because it's not great at printing. That's not really what it was built for. We've kind of shoehorned it into this model for us to give parents access to an individual letter. We do generate letters through SQL Server and through Visual Studio, and have Microsoft reports that run letters as well as just regular letters from Infinite Campus. So if a parent has 2 kids, they've got to go in and print 2 letters, but it's a heck of a lot faster for them because they're able to do it like that at home instead of calling the school, only being able to do it during school hours, or waiting for a letter to get sent home to them. So parents have been pretty positive feedback from parents on it. So looking at the next question from Ryan about licensing, we did purchase, we have the district-wide license through campus. We were able to do a district-wide license, or you can do minimum licenses. In order to do the portal hosting, you have to have a district-wide license. And we had enough users and enough people who were going to be using it that it made sense to do the district-wide for us. And it's worked out well. And there are a bunch of different ways you can go about hosting the Tableau server. You can host it, like we host it through BOCES, which is a New York kind of cooperative. It's essentially the New York version of county-wide school districts. So that's hosted for us at the county level, and we share it with another school district. But I know other districts that have it hosted directly by Tableau or through Infinite Campus. There's a variety of different ways that the servers can be set up, but ours is hosted again at BOCES or county level, and then we connect to it from there with the district-wide license.
Awesome, Eric, you just ran through those questions. Great responses. Give a moment for any last questions in the Q&A box, but otherwise, thank you so much, Eric. This is really awesome. I know, like from working in a school district, I know this would have been like a really great tool for us to have applied. So excited to see how others take this knowledge and run with it.
Yeah, thanks. I'm happy to reach out if there's any other questions that come up later on too.
Awesome. So we can transition to our next presenters. So we have today on the call, we have Chantavia Moore and Lisette Flores, and they're going to be talking about their application of Tableau in their districts. So I'll hand it over to whoever is going to be presenting.
Good morning, everyone. Can you see my screen? All right, let me share. All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Chantavia Moore, as Thomas mentioned, and I'm joined here by my colleague, Lisette Flores. I am the current VP of Strategy and Operations for Camino Nuevo Charter Academy, and today we're going to present a bit about how our small team was able to expand the reach of Tableau throughout the district in 1 year. But first, we want to talk a little bit about us and how Camino Nuevo was formed. So we are a network of free public charter schools. We serve about 3,400 students, and we have 6 campuses, an early childhood center, 4 K-8s, and a high school. We are definitely a neighborhood school serving the MacArthur Park area in Los Angeles and also a bit of central LA. Our students are really, really diverse, mainly Latino. Most are free and reduced lunch, and we have lots of English learners, a high percentage, almost 80% or more of English learners. Our students are mainly first-time Americans and first-time, when we're done with them, first-time generation college students. So we have a huge mission to bring them into our country, but then also to educate them and make sure that they're college ready. Our mission and approach is to not only prepare them for college, but also to make sure that they leave us being literate critical thinkers, but also problem solvers and agents of social justice. Here's just a little bit about our students. So Camino Nuevo has actually been around for 20 years serving the LA community. And I would say over the last 2 to 3 years, our senior leaders have become very keen on using data to solve the issues that have presented themselves within the district. Here's just a snapshot of our 2021 org priorities. They actually stayed stable for 2 to 3 years in a row. And you see data-driven continue to pop up. We want data-driven accelerated learning in the classroom. We want teachers to have data in order to drive the instructional practice. And then also data-driven decision-making to ensure that our operations teams are making more efficient decisions as well. And so we were kind of left with a dilemma as a very small data team. When we started this work, district-wide Excel spreadsheets were everywhere. They loved manual updates, like that was just the way in which data was generated and shared. There was only one Tableau creator, and that person was doing multiple other responsibilities. So we were only seeing kind of the fruits of the Tableau work to result in like 2 to 3 workbooks a year. And then even when we did have a Tableau production, it was usually a very customized, like specific purpose. It wasn't something to use in perpetuity. We had few users. Of our 500 staff members, 10 to 15 may have even known that Tableau existed. And that was kind of our starting point. So I know that there are a lot of other small districts out there. And so this presentation is mainly for you. Like, how do you get to data driven with a very small team and maybe not the data skills that are necessary? And so in order to get to data driven, we kind of put together a 5-point plan, right? We're going to develop Tableau skills. We're going to create more workbooks. Our current data warehouse did not have all the data that was necessary for the instructional nor the operations teams. And so we needed to expand its reach. We need to learn how to manage our warehouse, which was a new skill set that we hadn't taken on, learning SQL, and also grant access to our staff members. Although we had 500 staff members, we didn't have that many licenses when we began. And so it was critical that as we generate more workbooks, we actually are granting more people access to Tableau to be able to use those new data skills. So we hit the ground running, like, how are we going to solve this problem? And that is what birthed the idea of a creator learning group. Our data team was very small. And so in order to expand the skills and get the work done, I had to recruit other members of the organization to learn the skills. And so we established a learning group and intentionally had them commit to producing 2 additional data dashboards throughout the course of the year. They also had agreed to participate in resource sharing and kind of like group learning experiences. And then the other main component of it was the feedback cycle. So while we are simultaneously teaching the Tableau creator skills, we also were trying to ensure that the end users were growing their ability to read and analyze data. And so getting their feedback was a part of the process. Like, you're going to design something and then the end user is going to provide feedback on it. And you're going to use that for improvement. And then ultimately, because we did not have a whole lot of time to dedicate to just specific Tableau training, it required a lot of independent self-learning. And so sharing a lot of the resources that are available and for free from Tableau was kind of our key to growing skills pretty quickly to a broad spectrum of users. So birth the creator learning group. The member selection process was really critical. We wanted to ensure that we selected creators that came from a diverse variety of roles. So we had like assistant principals who were very familiar with our instructional plan and data, and we also had like registrars and the enrollment team members, so that we could balance kind of the passions for data and the inquiry that existed throughout the district. We were intentional around selecting members from multiple campuses so that because we have a K-8 and a high school, they have different interests around and different needs around what type of data dashboards reflect and are useful for their staff. And then ultimately, all of them also had to have a capacity for independent learning, as I mentioned. But once they were selected, I would say that if you're going to select them, like the exclusivity of the group mattered. So they received like a welcome packet, a congratulations. Like we really wanted them to feel that this was a huge opportunity, not only for them individually to like gain Tableau skills and resume building skills, but then also that they were actually able to deliver and use those skills to help the organization improve. At the start of our Tableau creator group, I actually used some presentations that I had received through the user group to show them what was possible. For a number of our creators, they had no idea that Tableau existed or what was possible through it. And so I spent some time showing them this is what is possible if we use Tableau, if we grow our skills, and how many data fields we could combine into one dashboard for our use. So early warning indicators was something that had been talked about for a while. This is one that I showed. And then also about a year ago during COVID, we were shown this one, which was all the surveys that we sent out through COVID, just being able to see them in one place, what the technology our students had, whether or not they were ready to participate in person or whether or not remote was working. And this was just another sample that I showed to kind of set the bar really high for what was possible and excite the team. And then the training began. So we did have one formal training of Tableau Desktop for all of the new creators. We had a total of around 18 to 20 new creators, some from the home office and some recruited from the school sites. We also went over student confidentiality, which was critical because now single site schools were going to have access to the data for the entire district. And I would say the most important training, aside from the formal Tableau desktop training, was data warehouse and infrastructure. And the reason that that was so important is because a lot of those, like the data systems behind the scenes, are things that none of our staff members are familiar with other than the data team. So knowing that we use PowerSchool as our SIS system, we were using Illuminate for a lot of the interim assessments. Some of our interim assessment information and instructional information like Achieve 3000, and now we use iReady. Some of them were on automatic API sync, and some of them were manual uploads. And so explaining that to the creators was critical so that when they clicked on those common data sources, they knew what to expect and what also wasn't there and that they may need to connect via Excel. So we went over kind of common data sources and then what resources were available for them to independently learn Tableau. Throughout the year, we would host like membership meetups where based on kind of the struggle points that the group was going through, we could do a skill share. So either a team member would share out, hey, here's one of the dilemmas I have, and then we would collectively work to problem solve and determine like what feature in Tableau would help best suit or meet that need in the dashboard. That also was a way in which the training continued aside from just independent research. So at the beginning of so once they were selected and they were committed to the task of developing 2 dashboards for the district, I had them really think critically around like what a need was for their school specifically, and then ultimately the large project was for the district. And one of the key components was getting buy-in from their school leaders. So they had to meet with their principal, say, what are the data needs? The principals had a laundry list of options and ideas. And so together, the principals in alignment with the new creator and the home office were able to narrow it into like, what is the actual tangible dashboard that we have data for that we could produce? So we determined the final scope of the project and continued. Here are a few of the essential questions that popped up. And as you read through some of these, you'll see the diversity in the creators. So we had everything from special education compliance reports in Tableau to enhancing our recruitment efforts based on zip codes and using the mapping features in Tableau. We also had some instructional dashboards around like Q1 math assessments and how the students were performing, linked to Google Forms or a Google survey, as well as teacher effectiveness and evaluation results. So because we had such a diverse background in the creators, they were able to generate questions that really ranged the gamut to serve and meet the different needs of the school sites. So to encourage the creators to grow their skills and not just stick with the features that it instantly picked up during the training, we also set a few guidelines around what features should be included in their dashboards. So for the smaller project, you see the ones listed, it was basic features like, can you add filtering? Can the dashboards interact with each other? And they only were required to use one single source of data, and most of them chose Excel or one of the common data sources, and a tooltip for detail. In selecting these like basic features and allowing them to have that small win enhance their confidence to try for the larger project. And so I thought it was critical that we knew kind of the level of dashboard we were aiming for. And so we needed to scale that up, but pretty slowly, while keeping in mind that these were creators that volunteered and also had other things on their plate. So how do we like slowly ramp up skills? And this is just an example. Of course, for your creators, you could pick whichever features you feel like are most pertinent to the dashboards and the topics they're trying to solve. I also mentioned resources. So I think one of the critical components to us being able to pull this off was the wealth of resources that Tableau offers. We did do Desktop 101, but in addition to that, I also gave them access to the e-learning portal, some shorter training videos. I don't know if you've been on the Tableau website, but they're like 5 to less than 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minute shorter training videos. I gave them access to the public site to generate content and ideas for inspiration for their designs. And then we did rely a bit on the YouTube channel, the Tableau YouTube channel, where all of the conference sessions were available. So some very specific essential questions have been covered in conference sessions. And so it was nice to be able to refer them to there as opposed to having to learn the skills on my own, but it was a great resource. And before they started their projects, I thought it was critical that although I set the vision for ideally we would like to produce these really advanced dashboards, I wanted them to see kind of where I started and where I currently was with my skill level, which was, here's just a sample of it. I had basic bar charts. It was just as helpful to our school leaders, but this is our beginning of the year tech survey when we were returning from COVID, just determining which students needed devices, which already had them, and which students had internet at home and which needed hotspots. It was a very basic, I would say, visualization, especially compared to the things that Erik just mentioned, but being able to filter, being able to identify certain student populations was really all our leaders needed, and they really appreciate it. So although we had very ambitious goals for the end of our Tableau work, I wanted to let them know that it was okay that we started small. So with all of that, we launched the creator group and were able to produce some pretty stellar results. So during the stakeholder feedback portion, we were able to get feedback from the stakeholders and the end users as they navigated the different workbooks that were produced. You can see that by end of the year, the design rating was about a 4.5 or a 3.5. Ease of navigation was almost 5 stars out of 5. And answering the essential question hovered at about 4.5. One thing that I would note is that the smaller dashboards, we got higher ratings based on the users on our smaller dashboards at middle of the year than the final dashboards at the end of the year. I think a few things contributed to that in retrospect. One, when the creators were first trained, I think they came out a bit more passionate and inspired. And so the amount of time they were able to dedicate to the smaller projects was more. Something happened in the spring where there were a lot of competing priorities. And so that was reflected in the feedback. But then also we upped the ante between the small and large projects, as opposed to designing just for your school site. For the larger project, they had to design for the network. And so I think that also created a little bit of challenge for some of the users who were so site specific to think broader. But nevertheless, we were very happy with the results from the user feedback, and it helped shape the design, the skill development of the creators moving forward. So next, I'm going to actually shift to Lissette, who is one of our creators, so she can hear firsthand on how the experience was for her and what made her successful in being able to grow her Tableau skills.
Thank you, Chantavia. Hello, everyone. My name is Lisette Flores, and I am a creator. And I'm here to share a little bit about how I was able to make the time to learn a new skill and to build a dashboard for our district. And at the beginning, just like when we started the creator group, when I joined, I was super excited and I wanted to learn from beginning to end and create so many dashboards. Like I was shooting for like, I want that dashboard. I want to create that dashboard. And quickly I realized, given all the different priorities with COVID, that I had to narrow my focus and be a little bit more realistic. So what I had to do was focus on one question and one district need. And then from there, really carve out the time in my calendar. So set like 2-hour blocks for like 2 days and really communicate with my team, like, this is my focus time and I'm gonna work on Tableau. Do not Teams me unless it's an emergency. And it worked really well. Some weeks I was able to carve out like 4 hours. So depending on the projects that I was managing, it was like, some weeks it was like 2-hour chunks. Other weeks it was like only 2 hours within the week. So it really depended on the scopes of work. And during that time, what I did was went through all those resources. I went through those resources, reviewed the material from like Desktop 101, looked at the Tableau community, at the actual other visuals that other users had created to kind of download them and try to see how they created the workbook and then work from there. That was really helpful. And also to meeting with other creators, meeting with them to get feedback, to bounce back ideas. Is it really answering the question? So I use that time for like building my skills, using the resources, and then getting feedback from users. And from that, I was able to create a district dashboard on absenteeism. So if you switch over to the next slide, we started the school year with a hybrid model. And within that hybrid model, for California, we had the option to offer independent study as part of this hybrid model. And we started with an external and internal independent study program and also in-person instruction. And all of this attendance is being tracked in our PowerSchool SIS. So as we started off the school year, there was a huge need for leaders to understand how the pandemic was impacting our students. So we needed to know like what students are being impacted by close contact and being quarantined, what subgroups are being impacted, and then why is our ADA dropping below the 95% threshold. So I created this dashboard and I was able to present it to leaders to really engage in the conversation on like, okay, what's happening here? And it turned out that the students who were being quarantined were actually the ones being most impacted by absenteeism. And I'm just really proud of the dashboard that I created because it was, I presented it to leaders. They were able to engage in conversations and we were able to identify like the gaps within our processes and procedures that we had to close on or shift for our semester 2 to start off for our semester too. So I am really proud of my dashboard. So it doesn't look like the first beginning slides, but it is equally as helpful and useful. And from there, I want to share a little bit about a little tips and tricks and really the magic of the creator group. And this is something that you can share with your creators, and it's data access. So they need to be able to access the data and the data to have unique IDs. If the data doesn't have unique IDs, then just building their skill set to make sure that they know how to create those unique IDs. And then just full disclaimer of like, you're gonna manipulate the data, you're gonna have to clean the data, whether it's reformatting the data, that's gonna be part of the work. It's not just gonna be, you know, diving in right away and building the dashboard. And independent learning was very, very helpful. Those resources, checking in with your teammates for collaboration. And that in itself is the community. And I found that within the community, that's where the spark is as far as like innovation, right? Because you meet with the people and then you say, is it really answering the question? Are you really gathering this from the dashboard? And then we bounce back ideas and we use that space to really make our dashboards cleaner and just really thinking of the end user to kind of make sure that they're able to answer the question. Another really important part of it is leadership. You need a leader and leadership to keep the team together and to keep us focused, to drive those dashboards to make sure that they're aligned to either the strategic goal or aligned to the current needs so that we're able to engage in these conversations. And then another great thing about it is at the end, just getting the feedback. And even when it's a final dashboard, there's still feedback as you work along, but really knowing that there's different versions. So we can't answer all the questions with one dashboard. So just taking that feedback, saving it for version 2, whether it's updating those dashboards on a quarterly basis or every semester. So just the revision of the dashboards. So I really enjoyed the creator group, and this is my learning experience that I'm sharing with all for your future creators. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chantavia.
Thanks, Lissette. And I promise I didn't pay her to say that. All of our creators had a pretty great experience learning something new. And truth be told, we've all been very stressed because of COVID, but this during the creator learning group was like our one little outlet where we had so much positivity and optimism, and we felt like we were growing. So there are lots of celebrations throughout the year. With skill development, we ended up training 18 new staff members to create workbooks, and 2 home office individuals were trained around how to maximize visual appeal and used to participate in like the individual one-on-one chats with the creators. We published 14 new workbooks throughout the district, including one comprehensive instructional dashboard that incorporated a number of the instructional assessments that the team was using. We were able to expand our warehouse to include 5 new data sources based on what the creators were designing around. Our IT and our knowledge management teams were trained in SQL as we learn more around warehouse management and how to actually mine for the data that we need. And then last, we were able to, during the process, we granted additional licenses based on the dashboards that were created. So for example, when the enrollment dashboard rolled out, she wanted specific operations and enrollment leads to see it. And so those were the users she got feedback from. So we did expand staff access, but it was through the audience members of the dashboard specific. So as just a closing, although we weren't able to like make a huge leap toward data driven, we were able to move the needle a bit. And so my, I guess, closing words would be there were 6 components of being able to establish the creator group and have it run pretty successfully. And those included having a clearly defined need and vision. By setting the bar very high with those initial dashboards, people were very inspired. Like Tableau, when it's really maxed out, is so inspiring and it's fun in order to be able to deliver and design toward an actual organizational need. We were very intentional about staff selection because I needed them to have passion for data, or at least data inquiry. Like the teacher who has all of the questions and wants all of the resources, they were perfect for this project because they're often figuring out where the gaps are in our current software programs. And so that was intentional around staff selection and those that had the capacity to engage with the feedback. Having the community support and mentorship of just knowing that there's a bit of accountability and someone else going through this helped the experience so that it didn't feel like just one extra thing on their plate. By allowing them to start with like their topic specific passion projects and like the thing that was core to the questions and the data that they wanted, they were able to learn the Tableau skills, but simultaneously kind of scratch that or check that box around their passion. And that helped develop the skills and the confidence and help them persevere through learnings, something that could be difficult, especially with all of the competing priorities. Sharing the resources would be another key. And then last, just establishing realistic expectations. We are all super stretched, and that's an understatement during COVID. And so being able to tell them in the beginning of the creator group that like my goal, yes, while our goal is to get to this super advanced dashboard, like it's okay if we end up with bar charts and pie charts because that is going to meet our need. And I wanted them to also have realistic expectations for how long it would take to become an expert. So with that, I actually am done and I can open the floor for questions. I have not been watching the chat, but.
No, you're good. There was a lot of great conversations. So
Okay.
I encourage you and Lissette to scan that chat just to see what was happening while you were presenting. There are a series of questions. I'm going to reorder them because they're kind of clustered in a specific way and themes here. So I'm going to do my best to keep them grouped. I think one of I'll start this off with beyond the exclusivity and welcoming factor, did you have to offer any other incentives for recruiting people into the creator group?
Yes, we did. We did offer a stipend. It was pretty minimal. And so we did offer a $2,000 stipend. We used our federal ESSER funds because we needed dashboards and we needed data quickly to our school leaders during this emergency time.
Perfect. And that was one of the other questions was how is this funded? So perfect. The other, so now I think I'm just going to kind of go pick up an order here. Let's see, what recommendations do you have for upskilling around calculated fields? Do you have any specific recommendations? And I might pose that, well, yeah, I'll just leave that open for now.
Yeah, I can tell you what we focused on. So because Excel was so familiar with most of our users, I would say most. There were some that Excel was even brand new, but I would say we leveraged Excel and kind of the formulas that they were used to. And then we did a skill share on how to translate those into Tableau. There were a number of the shorter videos that we focused on. We didn't do like the long Tableau creator path resource, but instead, and actually I can go back to it, there was like a 5 or 6 minute video on calculated fields. And so we played that and then we unpacked different examples based on what the creators were, the need was for their specific dashboard.
So you started out with those 20, and I think you mentioned 18 were developing. Is that the current number after, where you are in the current program and maybe, and you're nodding your head, that's a yes. What do you foresee in the next, version of?
Yeah, so we did, to be honest, we did lose about 2 to 3 creators through transition. Like basically they transitioned from the organization. We've had some turnover, as it has most in education. But the ones who are still around were really passionate at the end of this year around what changes needed to be put in place next year. And actually, I can show that. I don't know if it's going to show. I have a slide. Let me pull it up. At what year 2 would have entailed or is entailing for us. So the next phase of it would include, so the theme around the creators was like, it was hard to find time. How do we find time when our school site has all of these demands on us? And so they requested that we congregate together for quarterly data design days. And so that so that they were all amongst one another and kind of piggyback offer one another in the design process, as opposed to having to call on teams. So implementing quarterly design days and having the questions established before that design day is one of the shifts moving forward. And now that the skills are there, we also have established a survey for data needs pipeline. A lot of our creators spent a good bit of time meeting with school leaders, trying to narrow into what question they were trying to answer based on the data that was available. Now that we've expanded our warehouse, what's possible is a lot broader. And so now the leaders are actually generating ideas on what types of dashboards they want. And so the creators can, instead of focus on designing the question, they now can just focus on the design of the dashboard. So those are just a few of our next steps. Also, we are now rolling out, we've purchased licenses for teachers now that our instructional dashboards are up and running, enough to be able to expand access a bit more.
Awesome. Another question up here. How do you handle data consistency with different creators? So do they all use one common data source and apply to the same business rules to the data?
That's a good question. So we have our data warehouse set up with some core common data sources. And so when the creators started their work, we would refer them to the same data sources, and that helped minimize kind of the field naming, like the differences that they could have come up with. But aside from that, because their projects were so different, we didn't have much overlap in this area enough to have to norm. But Lissette, I don't know if you would speak a little bit more to that as knowledge management lead.
Yeah, I agree. We did point creators to the warehouse, but we did have teachers who wanted to take a look at the actual local assessments, like their school assessments. So there was some data that like we couldn't norm for all the creators. It was just like they were using their local school site data to kind of create the dashboards.
Yeah, I recall those. And in those situations, the naming and the titling was really critical. Like I wanted to make sure that they established like this is site specific. This is just our 4th grade, so that the dashboard was among the others that the users were looking at or that the feedback was coming from, so that they would know that it was tailored toward a specific campus. I would say that moving forward, we would probably encounter that issue more than initially. Like I wanted them to pick something site specific because it was more engaging and they were more motivated around that. So we allow for some of that wonkiness in the beginning that we would need to like clean out moving forward.
So I have a follow-up question to that. Has the team thought about leveraging published data sources out to the Tableau server, and that your new creators would be connecting to those that are kind of certified through the process and already have built-in default sorts and calculations already built in?
We did go through the resources or the sources that were automatically connected. I think the hiccup or the barrier there was a lot more requests for tailored Camino specific data sources. So the existing warehouse didn't have everything that we needed, but when they did, like zip codes, like those type of, we were able to use those.
Another question in here. So there's one more. So for those still on the call with us, if you have additional questions, don't forget to pop those in the Q&A. Have you been able to see how much creators' projects have been used and shared by other staff members? So what does the tracking look like?
Yes, so we are able to see kind of the clicks per dashboard and per page. I can tell you when we first rolled the dashboards out, they were like quickly absorbed and the numbers were really high. Now, most of them have phased out and they're creating new dashboards. And so I do think that that's something that we're going to have to work on, is creating dashboards that last in perpetuity. Because when you do Q1 instructional data, it's only really good in Q2 to analyze. And so because of the topics that were selected, some of them were not in perpetuity, did not last in perpetuity, but some of them did. So ones that are still very relevant are around like recruitment efforts. We've regenerated like where our incoming students are coming from, and that has been the target areas for a lot of our recruitment efforts. And then compliance and the vendors for special education, like the special education providers, knowing which ones were triggering a lot more absenteeism versus attendance of those students has helped shape our partnerships moving forward. So some of the dashboards are still very well used, and some have kind of phased out.
Can you talk, so to that point, because it might be rolling around in some folks' heads, what does it look like for kind of your server clean out? Like, do you have a plan in place for going through and archiving those that may not get that traction? And then how do you communicate that?
Yeah, so the way we've set up our Tableau folders, there's one folder that has ultimate permission for all of the leaders. And those are the most current. So annually we go through and either update that folder of what is accessible from our leaders based on what has expired and what hasn't. And so the ones that were time specific or time stamped for a certain year, those get excluded over the summer so that they are not kind of bogging down the dashboards that they have to go through.
Perfect. Okay. There's another question that just came in. At what level of involvement did your IT staff in this process, and moving into your second year, how much support are you getting from your non-IT staffers?
So IT was critical in the beginning with setting up the data warehouse and making sure that we had access to it and the servers were running. But aside from that, once we were able to log into Tableau Desktop and all of the creators had desktop and were able to access the common sources, we didn't really have to tap into IT anymore. The permissions that were already enabled on Tableau allowed our users to have access. The only thing that we still go to IT for is if we are off campus or working remotely and still need access to the intranet or the internal data sources. So sometimes we have to use VPN to get in or make adjustments to our desktop one-on-one, but moving forward, we haven't really needed to use IT.
So I think maybe one differentiator with your group that might be different from some of the other organizations is IT really helps manage the data warehouse and sources. And so that could be where this question is stemming from. And your team is structured a little differently, right? Like your team is really the data warehouse folks.
We are the data warehouse.
Yeah, it looks a little different. And so that might help kind of bring some clarity around how Camino is leveraging IT and maybe a little less fashions than some of the rest of you, because Chantavia and team are taking on all of that data themselves. All right, another question. Is there any seasonality that might help to regularize standard views, like for goal setting, progress tracking, evaluating efficacy? Also, do you have any dashboards for students, or are you also teaching students to make dashboards? Just a couple different topics in that one.
Yeah, I'm going to need you to reword the first one, but I can take on the second one because we had some teachers that were selected as creators, and the really data savvy ones, that was their passion project, which is I want my students to be able to see their progress and track it over time. And so although we are not at the place where we have granted specific user access to students, I do know that that teacher, the entire spin of his dashboard was so that it was for student consumption. They were the audience members around, and so they would get a one-pager on their specific progress thus far, which ones they're missing or which areas they needed to improve in. And his entire motto was to empower the students to use more data, to understand their own data, but then to use it as a motivator moving forward. So we don't have student accounts, but it was used in that way. Could you reword the first question though?
Yeah, and maybe and I apologize, David, if I'm missing the mark on this one, but I'll just kind of maybe rephrase the first part. Do you have dashboards where you're leveraging them for goal setting and tracking progress against? Like, is that part of any of the outcomes from your creator groups? So forward thinking instead of autopsy.
I would say, I think that is something that we're growing to. I can tell you, well, Lissette, if you talk about your LCAP dashboard, her project for this year, I think that hits at that mark.
Yeah, I could speak a little bit. So there is a need at our district for progress tracking. So we did start the LCAP dashboard to the idea is to create it to share with leaders so that they're monitoring their progress, but we had to shift a little bit. So I stopped working on that dashboard to refocus on the COVID absenteeism. But I will say that the dashboard that I created, we're going to use it to monitor progress for independent study. So making sure we're going to use it as a way to track student attendance to see if there's been improvement based on their completed work. So we're getting there. But it is a need, but it's slowly getting there. Yeah.
Yeah, I would add just a little context there. So in the state of California, all schools have to have a LCAP plan. It's like a learning continuity, and I forgot what the acronym means, but basically it's your 3-year plan for how you're going to move the needle for your students toward the state priorities. They were created last summer. And so the project that Lissette had was to show those metrics and then to have interim data points so that leaders would not have to wait until the LCAP results were published at the end of the year, but that we could monitor them internally. That's probably the closest that we have to a progress tracker that's currently being designed.
Perfect. I think those are all the questions. As I saw questions pop up in the chat, we asked that they be moved over. So I'm pretty sure we've hit everything. And so thank you to both Chantavia and Lissette. That was great and I think inspiring. And I think a lot of people are going to have a lot of takeaways from both presentations today, whether you're automating those form usage or, how do you bring on new team members to help you take on this workload, creative and thoughtful on both fronts. So thank you to both of our presenters for sure. We have just a few minutes left together. We're actually going to probably wrap up quickly and you all can have a little breather in between your work today. So we have just a closing slide here. Next steps, you will be receiving an email from Thomas, part of this leadership team here. There will be a link, a link to the recorded session from today. So it usually takes a few days for that to get published by Tableau out to the YouTube site. And then if any of our presenters have resources that they'd like to pass on, we'll collect those and send out one communication to the attendees. And we welcome and appreciate any feedback. So feel free to send that to myself or to Thomas. We work closely together. As well as Cassidy and Sarah on here as well. So any feedback, as always, we're looking for, presenters going forward. And so you often see surveys going out or, feel free to reach out to us. We love having diverse sessions that cover not only, right, like the theory, the approaches, the how-tos, and all encompassing. So we appreciate all of that. Within the slide deck that you'll be receiving via that email, there's our common links to some additional resources to support you in this K-12 space with your use of Tableau. I appreciate your time today. There's quite a few of you who stuck with us to the very end. And so I appreciate you hanging in there, the great interaction with the presenters via questions in chat. We appreciate that. And a huge thank you again to the presenters for the time that they invested in this presentation to make sure that they're able to share their great, exciting work at their districts and organizations, along with all of our K12 friends across the nation and internationally now, right? We had a attendee from UK. So thank you all. We will wrap up just a few minutes early, and we will see you at the next one. Thanks, everyone.